Good afternoon, good afternoon. How's everyone feeling? I know we all had some food, so it slows you down a little bit, so I just wanted to make sure everyone's up. My name's Dion Walcott, the Partnerships Director for Pencil Lewis College. We're going to get into a conversation today about career pathways. It's called Tapped In. Before we get into it, I'll let everyone introduce themselves, and then we'll rock and roll.
Chuck Young, I'm the Franchise Operations Director with the Athlete's Foot and currently facilitating our START program, which is our Strategic African American Retail Track, where we seek to bring in African Americans as our next retail partners.
Hey everyone, I am Sarah Waston. I am a Senior Color Materials Designer in the automotive industry. I am currently at Ford.
Good afternoon, everyone. Daleyna Adkinson with Puma North America, and I'm the Director of Brand Heat and Culture and a proud HBCU graduate.
What's happening, everyone? I'm Garry, Thaniel. I am the General Manager for sneakers at eBay.
There you go. Give them a quick round of applause. So when we were designing this panel, our thought process was like career pathways in terms of like everyone here, we didn't design it this way. Like you didn't think this was going to be the career that you wanted to go into. I think a lot of times when you start thinking about your career, you have a very specific pathway. And you're thinking, if I do A, B, C, D, I'm going to get this result, which 9 times out of 10, it usually doesn't work like that. So for me, for example, like I'm the director of this beautiful school for partnerships, but I actually started as a social worker. And when I was doing social work, the whole thought behind social work is how do you get young people to do things that they don't necessarily want to do to drive change? Then about 10 years after my social work career, I started getting into like doing partnerships with museums and realized that social work is actually the same skill set and mindset into marketing and partnerships. Because when you're doing partnerships, you're actually still trying to drive people to engage them to do things and spend their money and drive action. And that's when I realized that, you know what? You can't actually you could go to school and get the education, but it's really not a career forward. You're always building your career backwards. And that's how you can explain it. You could usually explain your career backwards better than you can explain your career forward. So that's what the discussion is going to be about. Chuck, that being said, explain to them how you got there.
Sure. So I started out in sales as an account executive with Nike and with Jordan. And I kind of always had a passion for how your guys' great product kind of showed up at retail. And there was a point in my career where I said to myself, there's no such thing as kind of a parallel move. There's no such thing as a lateral move. It's all kind of building cachet in myself. And really just kind of had a passion to get into the retail side. So that's kind of what led me to the Athlete's Foot initiative. So for you guys that know, this is my second time around with the Athlete's Foot. So it kind of comes full circle for me. So that's kind of, that was my introduction. And that's what brings me here, man.
Thank you for that. Sarah, hold on, before you go, I'm going to give you your flowers, right? Who knows what a Wrangler is? Everyone say, uh-huh. Yeah. Right. So when she starts to talk about herself, like you're going to have a totally different perspective on what a Wrangler is when you see it on the street. So go ahead.
I had no care or knowledge of the automotive industry at all when I was in school. I went to school for fashion design, and I got my BA in Fine Arts and Fashion Design. But coming back home, I needed an internship, and I landed a paid internship, $70,000 at Chrysler. I had no idea what color materials design was. I just saw the word materials, and I applied. I then became responsible for a lot of large nameplate brands at Chrysler, including the Wrangler, Jeep Wrangler that you see on the road today, because we work 5 to 6 years out. I know Crystal also was talking about that. Wrangler, Jeep Grand Cherokee, Renegades. I then went to Ford, was responsible for the Lincoln Navigator, Nautilus. I did just actually recently, and I didn't tell you, Dion, I did the advanced portion of the new 7th Gen Mustang that just launched this week.
Okay. Humble brag.
That's it.
Oh, no, I thought you had more.
Right.
D, Director of Brand, Heat, and Culture, right?
That's it. All things black.
Oh, okay.
All things black.
Explain that backwards. How did you get there?
I get this question a lot when people hear my title. They're like, brand, heat, and culture, that is dope. What is it? And I think when I think about the career and the opportunity, I think about two things. One, someone somewhere is recommending you for a job you didn't know existed. The work that you do, the vision, the creativity, the passion you have. I had no idea when I started out as a PR major at Bowie State University that this is where I would end up creating for black consumers, thinking with them in mind, finding ways to introduce partnerships, vendors, anything black, I want it, I want to be a part of it, and I want to connect it. The other thing that I would say is when you're in your planted season, don't be discouraged because you will hit your bloom season. And in the planted season is when you're grinding, you're trying to get promoted, you're taking on more work, and you are not moving forward. And you're like, what is happening? Then all of a sudden, there's a moment where Puma creates Director of Brand, Heat, and Culture, and me helping to build departments from ground up, me setting vision, developing strategy, galvanizing internal teams to rally around new ideas, bringing leadership along on new programs and initiatives they've never heard of. It all makes sense now. So in that planted season, don't get discouraged because the bloom season's coming and you're gonna be ready.
I mean, Gary, you and I, we've chopped it up a couple times, and we talk about GM of sneakers for eBay. And we said 20 years ago when you first started your career, that wasn't even actually a job, right? So, like, speak about it backwards.
Yeah, when I look backwards, it's interesting because I've always been super passionate about sneakers. First job I ever got in my life was to get a pair of Concord 11s. Like, that's the reason why I got my first job is because my mom wouldn't buy them for me. But I also realized that coming out of college, you know, there just wasn't a job that I could have said, hey, this would be the perfect role for me within the sneaker sector. At least I didn't know about it. If there was, I didn't know about it. So I followed what I was interested in. I was interested in retail. Like, I like retail. Like, retail's like, you know, I used to play football. Once I stopped playing football, retail became my sport. Like, the work I do is my sport. And by that, I mean the same level of dedication I tried to become the best football player, I want to become the best professional. So when you train for a sport, you develop like different skill sets, right? And you work on different muscle groups and all that other stuff. And that's how I've approached my career. Developing my general management skill set, focus on being a better operator, a little HR, some marketing, product development, you know, like, so when I look at my career, I couldn't tell you 5 years ago that I'd be in this role because this role didn't exist 5 years ago. I'm the first ever GM for sneakers for eBay. But what I can tell you is what I've tried to do throughout my career is build a skill set that's super transferable so that, like, regardless of where the journey takes me, because I don't know where the career journey takes you. And I think most people on this panel wouldn't have told you, hey, when I started, I thought I would end up here. But I'm going to be prepared for it because I'm investing in the right level of skill building. And I'm also going to give myself a tough look in the mirror and say, hey, you need to get better here. You're pretty strong here, but if you really want to be great, take your strength and make it a superpower and then improve here at the same time. And invest in either education, mentorship, or, you know, job experiences and take a year and invest in yourself and go do something you never thought you would do so you can build that skill.
One thing I always like to do when we talk about careers, especially, is like everyone here is established and they've gotten where they are, right? But we don't really talk about the dark side of it, where it's like the gaps. And that's the truth where all the gems are that you need to share. So, G, I know me and you talked about it before. It's like, how do you close some of those gaps when you're in a moment where you're like, shit, I don't know what to do. I don't even know how to move forward because this is completely new to me, right? Like, what are some of the tips that you would give?
Yeah, I would say the first thing I do when I call it getting lost in the curve sometimes of life, the first thing I do is seek counsel. Like, I've been really fortunate from mentors to, former bosses, to professors, people who can help coach me through it, because even though it's foreign to you, it probably isn't foreign to everyone. So reach out to people, be a little vulnerable, let them know, one, where you want to get to, because they can help you navigate where you are to get to your destination. And that's one of the things I've tried to lean on. And also, as D said, just staying focused on the fact that, like, every day ain't gonna be easy, and the journey continues. Like Nipsey said, the marathon continues. Like, you might hit mile 21 and think about quitting, but, you know, keep running.
Yeah, I think that those are great points. I think the other thing, one of the things that has always worked for me is just taking the time to reflect. You know, I always think about growing up. My mom would always say, if I did something wrong, she would always say, take your ass in that room and think about what you just did. And my whole career, I've done that, and I've taken time to really kind of reflect. And it's not about reflecting to see what I did wrong. It's really about getting better, right? As I got older, the thing that I realized is that I wasn't the best. And I'm still not, you know, so that's one of the things that really has driven me and has really helped me to kind of connect those dots throughout my career.
I also think, like, when it comes to the connecting the dots, like, when you know there's a gap, a lot of people will press pause and pay attention to the gap.
Definitely.
I always tell young people, like, when the students come, like, forget pressing pause, run directly to the gap and try to figure it out when you're in the mess, because that's usually when you're going to learn the most. When you press pause, it's just going to get wider and wider, and you're just going to get more scared to go solve the problem. So when you see the gap, run it directly into it, that's when you learn the most. Being at full, you want to go ahead, D?
Yeah, there's a book that I read called The Artist's Way, and part of the exercise, if you will, that goes along with it is every morning there are morning pages where you have to just get up and you write. And the author talks about how, as a creative, some of the areas where you're most resistant are where your biggest opportunities are. And so I agree with you, Dion, in terms of that moment or those periods where you feel like you're most resistant to something, or you feel like there's fear coming up. Embrace that, because that is where the opportunity is for you to potentially grow, for you to delve deeper into the skill set, to learn something new, to show yourself that you can ultimately do what it is that you're trying to do.
I was going to say, a lot of times I've observed that our ego can be our largest downfall. And one of my most favorite quotes that I almost like live to is, the man that knows something knows that he knows nothing at all. So I'm forever a student. I'm always learning. I never let my ego get in the way of thinking that, you know, I met this gap, but like it is somebody else. You know what I mean? I'm learning, or I'm picking up a different discipline that somehow correlates to what my career is, or to where I need to kind of get better at and sharpen at. Even if it's not, you know, directly designing, it's something that helps supplement where I could get better at. And once you get rid of ego and understand that you are still a student, I don't care, VP, GM, it could be whatever, you are forever a student. And that kind of keeps you at an upper echelon, and that gives you the edge 9 times out of 10 times out of 10, I'll say.
Sure. Just to ask you another question, just because I know we spoke about Ford a few times, and just thinking of it from transferable skills, because everyone has those. That's something that everybody has. You know, we're at a footwear forum, you were for Ford. So a lot of people be like, how is that connection actually happening, right? So maybe speak about like the transferable skills from like what you do and what people do or want to do in the footwear industry.
So I had a funny story with how I interviewed going at Chrysler. I said, I told you guys I came from fashion, right? So they just gave me a at-will project and said, how could you, bring fashion into color and materials design and show us your portfolio? My portfolio were garments. So I came to Chrysler with 3 garments of literally things that I've sewn, and I just told a story. And I told the story of how these materials were applied, what the placement of the materials meant for me, and how I could translate that to automotive, right? I didn't know what I was talking about. I just wanted that job.
Time you don't.
And I said, you know what? You said materials, so this is how I fit into your space. And that's essentially, ground level what that was. So sneaker application is looking at how the colorways work with certain materials, making sure it's not too heavy on the blue, a little light on the accent. You know, there's always those types of relationships between automotive design and sneaker design that I see a lot of crossover, actually. Like one of my friends, she works at Nike and she came from automotive. So it's so transferable, but people just don't know that. You know, and I love being that, you know, kind of just that push to be like, yeah, actually, like we're more similar than we are different.
Think, absolutely. And D, I know your journey started off not where you're at now, but with Puma. It was more agency. There's a lot of bends and turns, and maybe explain to them how it worked for you transferably.
Yeah, I think I've really, like, I would say I mastered the art of the pivot. I started out as a PR major, and my dad was like, what are you doing? You're gonna live in poverty. This is really terrible. Don't do this. And so I just wanted to prove him wrong. And I wound up getting an opportunity to work on the red carpet for the BET Awards. And I'll tell you how long ago it was. No, I got the opportunity. I didn't get an email. They mailed me a letter with the BT logo, and I just remember leaving it out on the countertop. I didn't say anything, and my dad saw it, was like, what is this? You're going to work for BET? And I was like, oh, I thought PR majors were broke. And from there, I really just, I stayed focused on Black consumer, Black culture, all things Black. And what I did was just delve deeper from PR to marketing. And I wound up going from the BET Awards to work for the DC Convention Center doing marketing communications. Then from there, I found a love of marketing, and I went over to TV One. And I was like, ooh, it's Black and it's marketing together? Let's do more of this. And then I went over to the LA Rams, and I got a chance to start their multicultural marketing department. And then went over to Facebook and got a chance to help them start their DE&I marketing department for the metaverse. And then went over to an advertising agency and helped them start their inclusive marketing. And so really the love of Black culture and love of marketing has been that guide. And regardless of what industry I'm in, I'm still doing the same thing. I'm connecting these incredible brands, this amazing consumer that's driving culture, and everything else takes care of itself.
That's great.
G, GM of sneakers, right? When you got there, and you're looking backwards, like, talk about 10 years ago, was GM of sneakers, was that the goal?
So the goal for me was to always be an operator. Like, I like running businesses. That's my thing. Like, I'm not the most creative person in the world. I told you, I thought, we were talking backstage, I thought when I graduated college I was going to be the next Puffy, but I can't really sing or make a beat. So I was like, I'll be Puffy on the business side.
Can't stop, won't stop.
I can't stop and I won't stop. Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it was, I love sneakers. I knew at some point I wanted to play in this sector and operate in this sector. I just didn't know if that was going to be with a company, but I was also prepared, like I was saying, I also was building my toolkit, so if I need to venture off and do it on my own, I'm prepared to take that risk too. So, like, for me, I didn't know that this role would be available 3 years ago because it wasn't. But, you know, what I tried to do is, you know, make sure that when the opportunity presents itself, I'm prepared to take advantage of that. And by that, I just, like I said, just continue to invest in me. Like, I got really comfortable with my journey. Like, and I think looking back on, you know, my career, people probably would have been were really critical in the moment. Mm-hmm. And I could explain it, and I was comfortable explaining it, and I was comfortable with the risk of everyone else not being able to explain my journey except for me. But I got to where I wanted to be because I kind of navigated and made the moves that I felt comfortable making and that my risk tolerance allowed me to do. A lot of people, if I didn't just like come and say, all right, so XYZ company, what path do you want me to get on, and I'll stay on that path. And like we talked about backstage, like I didn't do that because I don't know if I wanted to stay. Like particularly when I'm in my 20s and 30s, someone was like, you sure you want to do that? And I was, you know, you can, you know, grow at this company without, you know, going back to school or doing XYZ. I was like, I don't know if I'm going to want to be at this company in 5 years. Like I need to make sure that I am, you know, laying out my career path in the way that I can get to where I want to be, even if I don't know where I want to be is.
No, absolutely. Chuck, I know we spoke when we had that Zoom call, the rehearsal call, and you actually went to school for something completely different.
Yeah, which is crazy.
And,
So
and now where you are, like, you
Yeah.
got to share that part.
absolutely. So as a kid, I had a speech impediment, and I stuttered horribly. And so I studied speech pathology in college and sociology. And from the day I graduated to today, never stepped foot in that world. Ever stepped foot in that world. But I always consider myself a bit of a salesman. Even as a young kid, I think I would overcompensate for the impediment by selling stuff. You know, it was like I was a dude selling candy, right? I was missing lunch period, going to the candy store, coming back at the end of the day on the play lot. It's me selling candy. It's Chuck selling candy. And the thing that kind of struck me was that I never got disciplined for it. I never got disciplined for it. And when I started to think about it, I said, you know what? The reason that I didn't get disciplined for it because it was so different. And I was trying to make the whole exchange totally different. So I would literally package candy. I mean, it'd be one little annihilator, but I put it in a box. I'd take my mom's jewelry box, a ring box, and I'd put a red annihilator in there, and I'd sell it. Sell it for a nickel. Exactly, sell it for a nickel, sell it for a dime. And so I think that was the start of me just kind of understanding what sales meant, kind of understanding that, you know, the way this product shows up is what sells it. It's not, I mean, it's outside of the wonderful design that you guys do, but the way it shows up at retail, and I was retail at that time, so that kind of was my, you know, when I reflect and look at the genesis of who I am, that's where it all started. You know, so, and again, so as I kind of went further on in my career, it's just that stuck in my mind. It's like, you know, there's an art to this thing. There's an art to this thing. Don't try to perfect it. You know, just evolve. Just evolve, but be as best as you can at that. So, yep.
So we're at the footwear industry. We're at a conference about the footwear industry, I should say. And what I always say is you don't have to be super creative to work in creativity, right? So it's how do you find a lane and do it super well? All of you guys work in similar industries, sort of. Maybe just share with people, like, where do you see some of the opportunities for careers that people don't know exist, right? Because that's
absolutely.
a big part of it.
Yep.
Half the time, like when I was in school, I didn't even know what a partnership was. Right? I know what a director of partnership. I was like, what's that?
Sure.
Right? So like just even knowing what the titles or what the jobs are is half the battle sometimes.
Absolutely. Yeah, so I think when I look at the retail landscape right now, it's kind of undefined, right? I mean, we see retail coming back. You know, I've embraced the fact that, you know, we came out of this pandemic and folks were eager to get back into stores. And that is really kind of where the shift happened with me as well. And again, like I said, it not only the experience, but the opportunity to kind of lead different aspects within a store. So for me, I see like visual merchandising is huge right now. I mean, it is huge. It's a huge opportunity, but there's so much of an emphasis from our brand partners, again, about how that product shows up. So I think visual merchandising, that field is absolutely one of the bigger opportunities in my retail space
That's
right
where
now.
there's space.
Yep.
I think the beautiful thing about that I didn't even see, like when I first graduated college, was the expansion of social media and how people are really creating their own lanes. So even if you don't see a certain a particular title, that doesn't mean that you can't go out and create it. So when I went into color and materials design, it was really just at that point in time searching my likes and what feels familiar to me. And even like if you're not in that profession or in that field with your degree, it's whatever you like to do and find the synchronicity to it. And companies respect how well you could, you know, show up as your authentic self and then be able to kind of, you know, find the lane within, right? So I don't know. I just feel like I don't like to cap titles anymore because like we have that freedom now, you know? We have so much range.
Absolutely, and I think, you know, there's a very big difference between, well, not big, but there's creatives, then there's creators. And we're living in very much a creator time period. We're like, if it's not there, create it. They don't have that job, create it. Pitch it, create your own job title, own job description. Like, that's very much what's happening right now. So I agree with you. D.
Yeah, I agree with the same sentiments. The director of brand heat and culture did not exist before I joined Puma. My last 4 roles actually didn't exist, but I allowed my passion for Black people. I'm gonna keep telling y'all, I allowed that passion to drive me, and what I did was take the fundamental understanding of marketing and then apply it through our lens, through our filter, with the cultural nuance of who we are, to help brands connect better and make sure that it came across more authentic. So I would say that within this marketing space, multicultural marketing is really becoming not just niche anymore, but just general marketing. So there are huge opportunities there. I think you're seeing some brands call it inclusive marketing, DE&I marketing. I wouldn't worry about the name, but if that's a space that you're passionate about, I would just say, just dive headfirst into it. And it looks like brand strategy. It looks like experiential. It looks like influencer. Anything that you feel like we want, we desire, there's an opportunity for you to help us create and connect to that audience through everything, down to hair weaves, y'all. It's possible.
And I think where I see a lot of opportunity, you know, being in the role I'm in, I work cross-functionally quite a bit, right? And candidly, you know, in almost all the meetings, I'm one of, if not very few, I'm one of, not the only black person in those calls.
Me too.
So it's already, you know, from even in the seat I'm in, there's already very few of us, right? But then I look cross-functionally, and you know, I look at, you know, product, and my product, I'm not talking about sort of like product like I was used to when I started in retail. I'm talking about like the back end, technology, STEM, you know, all the stuff that is like infrastructure for business. Like I talked earlier about saying, you know, how I can continue to add to my skill set. And one of the things I try to do is just learn from like our engineers and like technology folks, because just like I'm not a creative, I'm not, you know, the most technically advanced guy, but I also work for, you know, a marketplace that we need to understand what are the impacts of metaverse, what are the impacts of AI, you know, how can we better serve people, you know, virtually, and how do we drive connectedness, you know, on our marketplace. And a lot of that stuff is a skill set that I don't have internally, right? And it's also a skill set that, you know, I'm gonna have my first kid in a couple months. I'm definitely gonna have her in like STEM classes and everything, because like, just because it's a void for me, it should be a strength for her. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely.
Thank you.
So we got about 7 more minutes left. I want to open up the floor to some questions. Someone all the way at the top has their hand up. You're going to have the strongest voice in this here.
There we go.
There you go. Oh. Tell me again.
So I use the mic. How y'all doing? My name is Jennifer. I'm currently the community marketing manager for Foot Locker in Detroit. And I, too, have a degree that I don't think I really use. But my question is for me, we interact with a lot of people from the city of Detroit. I'm born and raised in the city that may have not had the opportunity to go to college or go to school. And I know all of you guys kind of speak on doing something different from your degree. Sorry, I get nervous. So my question is, what advice do you have for those people who are equally talented, kind of taught themselves out the mud how to do those things, but on paper, they don't have that degree or that backing, but in the streets, they're doing it. They're their own creative marketing agency, you know, but they may not necessarily know how to word it or do it. That's my first question. And then 2, I know you spoke, Garry, about having a mentor or, you know, talking to people. Again, to that point, to those people who only know the people in their hood or in their neighborhood that do the same things, how do you find those mentors and people that will take you seriously when you just come into them? Because a lot of people be like, oh, that's dope. Yeah, I got you. But you're not following up with me. And I think we come in contact with a lot of people that are like that, and it's like they're equally as dope. So how do they get that mentorship where when they're in this one pocket of, you know, the city or wherever they're from? Sorry, I know it was 2 parts.
I'll answer the first one 2 ways. The simple answer, sign up to Prince Louis College. We'll teach you how to do it. The second answer, and I'm not joking, but I think, you know, when you start to want to do things on your own and you meet dope people, find a team of people. Sometimes people don't want to share information, but like if you can team up with people and not only make them your teammates, but look at them as your vendors, you can go super far. And what I mean by that is like, if Gary's a photographer, Dee's a videographer, you know how to put on the set, you're the salesperson, we're a team all of a sudden. And we could be vendors versus just teammates. We're like, I'm gonna hit Gary and get used to spending money with Gary. So we could have that conversation, and I call it co-opetition. So like, we're gonna cooperate, but we're gonna compete to move forward at the same time. Because sometimes you're looking to get information from people and they just ain't gonna share it. For no other reason, just because they don't want to. They got their own shit going on. So if you could build your own squad and not only look at each other as teammates, but look at each other as vendors, and then don't forget to check out Pencil Lewis College, you good.
Just really quick, I would say that, so Puma has a collective of all black designers. One of them, his name is Yafet. He's from Chicago. He was going to college and unfortunately had to drop out because his family couldn't afford it. He taught himself how to design via YouTube and now has designed for Puma, for Adi, and for Under Armour. Self-taught, no formal degree, and is now designing footwear at the highest level. So I would say to anyone who is interested in doing it, yes, sign up for Pencil, 100%, and then do it. 100% do it. Just do it.
Just quickly on the mentorship piece, I would say a few things. I think it's super important that you have mentors with an S. Like, you should be relying, the same way we talked about a team, you should be relying on a team of people to help guide and provide advice and provide guidance, because everyone has different experiences and really complement everything. The other thing I would say is, first, continue to come to events like this. You're going to meet so many people. The fact that y'all are spending Saturday here, please take advantage of the folks y'all have here. Reach out to people, get cards, and be persistent about following up. That's one thing I'll say is that, like, everybody here is super busy, has a million, and people, if everybody had time, they would want to get back to you immediately. But sometimes, like, email chains and inboxes get full. So be persistent about following up. Like, that's one of the things I learned super early on, is that, like, people want, like, the more you know, closed mouths don't get fed. So the more that you, like, reach out and, you know, continue to let people know that, hey, really want to, like, connect with you on this, or really want to build this, that persistence typically does pay off.
And use your social, use it. That's, you posting the pictures, y'all look good. You can reach out to us, DM us, tweet us. If you want to get to us, we're, you know, whoever it is, not just us, but use your social for sure.
The last thing that I would add is, you got to fall in love with being uncomfortable. I mean, that's one of the things that has really kind of guided kind of all of us, is kind of not even trying to figure it out, but that process of being uncomfortable, that's kind of when you discover yourself. I mean, I can hear the frustration in your voice and in the sentiment that you express, but I do believe that, like I said, that whole process is building what you are going to become. You know, but you can't define it, and don't try to define it right now. We just spoke earlier about the amount of times that we've changed majors. You can't ask an 18-year-old or a 25-year-old to tell you what the next 10 years looks like, you know. So I'd say get comfortable with being uncomfortable, and then throw yourself at projects that you have no idea what you're doing. No idea what you're doing, because guess what? At the end of that whole thing is, again, another layer to who you are. You build your cachet in that way. So I'd give you those two pieces of advice.
That's where you learn the most.
Yeah, absolutely.
Go ahead.
Peace, family. Peace. Everybody on the panel. Certainly appreciate the wealth of knowledge that y'all have shared while you're on the panel. I'm MJ Randall. I've spoken a couple of times. I'm a journalist. People probably know that by now.
You have to speak louder.
Yeah, okay, I could do that too.
It was sounding smooth, but it go loud now.
Your Rakim voice.
I could do that. I'm trying not to yell, so okay, I can use my big boy voice. So in addition to being a journalist, I mean, I started my brand. I refer to myself as a footwear A&R. Like, I look for, you know, brands. I look for designers to, you know, not only share their story, but share their work, you know, share what inspires them. But I made that shit up. It's just something I made up. And I heard you guys speak about making the positions that obviously you want to, that define you and define the work that you want to do.
Yeah.
So in terms of, and shout out to you, D. I heard you said you went to Bowie State. I'm a DC native. Shout out to the DMV. I always shout out the DMV anytime we in the space. So yeah, like in terms of, when you make these spaces that don't exist before you, same thing with you, Brother Garry, like that GM sneakers, like that didn't exist right before you. So how do you all, for those positions that didn't exist prior to your existence, how do you, what gives you the confidence, what gives you the fire, the energy to step in that purpose, even though it didn't exist before you got there?
Because I prepared for it. I was like, not to make it too short, but like I invested in myself and I prepared for it. So when the job opened up, I was like, look, I'm prepared for this. Not only do I have the skills to do it, I got the passion to do it. And if I mix skills with a high level of passion, then I can make magic.
I feel that.
Yeah, and I would say your tribe. I have an amazing group of people around me that when opportunities like this come up, I can go to them. One of them might be in the room, Tyrell Kirkham. The opportunity came up, and I'm like, hey, what do you think? What are the strategic opportunities? And so I think having that council of people around you, whether they're mentors or colleagues, that you can go to, also help you and encourage you to maybe take, step out on faith could be great too.
I feel that as well.
I mean, for me, I always say be crazy enough to try it, but then also be crazy enough to continue to learn it. Because, like, once you learn how to learn, there's no position that you can't create.
Straight up. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. We're wrapped up. Go this way. Go this way.